Welcome everyone to Innovation Week at the Mill. This is our kickoff panel going on right now. So we are excited to get started. And I'm going to pass this all over to Pat East.
Hey, thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it. Welcome to Innovation Week. So my name is Pat East. I'm the executive director here at the Mill. So every year the Mill produces 5 days of events surrounding technology and innovation and startups. And this year, pandemic or not, we are holding our Innovation Week, and we're doing it all virtual. And this week, for this week, we're focused. Each day has a particular focus this week. So the first 2 days are around AI and cybersecurity. Day 3 is focused on Crossroads, which is our statewide pitch competition. I'm proud to say it's the largest pitch competition in the state. And then Thursday and Friday is Flyover Podcast Festival. So that's Indiana's first, and to my knowledge, the only podcast conference. And so that's going to be keynoted by the CEO of Casted, which is a startup podcast in Indianapolis that's well known in the area and has good ties to High Alpha, which is a venture fund and venture studio. So really excited for this week and excited to get Innovation Week kicked off with this panel. So we have, let me introduce everybody really quick. So we've got John Hamilton, the mayor of Bloomington. We have Ali Manouchehri. He is the CEO of MetroStar Systems. So MetroStar is an IT services firm out of Washington, D.C. Ali and I met each other maybe 2 or 3 years ago now at this point, when they were looking to start a satellite office somewhere in the U.S. And thankfully they chose the Mill in Bloomington. And then we also have Mike Dodd. He is the IU program director for the National Security Innovation Network. Good morning, gentlemen. I appreciate you and taking your time.
Good morning.
Morning. Nice to be together.
All right, so let me just jump right in, and this is for anybody. Let me start with a easy softball question because we have a lot of different folks on the panel this morning. What is cybersecurity, and why should the average citizen care about it?
Somebody else answer that one first, not me.
Ali, take it from industry and I'll take it from government. All right, beautiful. Well, I mean, I think from the context of just thinking about cybersecurity, and I'll talk to it from an individual level. I think there's a lot to care about, and I think there was a PwC survey that was done recently of people's concerns of what could happen, from my flight getting canceled to my house getting robbed, to losing my wallet. And the number one result of that was my email or my social media accounts getting compromised. So I think when you really think cybersecurity at the consumer level, you can't help to ignore what happened to Adobe in 2013 when they lost 150 million user accounts that got compromised. Or to Equifax, that I think a lot of us, hits home for Equifax, is, a lot of our data. I mean, you think about as sensitive as data gets, that in 2017, 150 million people's accounts got compromised. To Marriott International, right, where 500 million accounts consistently for 4 years got compromised. So, I mean, these are not small numbers when you really think about what has compromised. These firms probably all have really great public relations as well, that they have covered, the consumer trust is probably at the all-time low, that probably less than 10% believe that they have control over their data. So I think when you talk about cybersecurity and where it stands today, there's a lot of mistrust, a lot of great opportunities of companies stepping up and doing good to protect data. But I think consumer data is probably top of mind when you talk cybersecurity, Pat.
Thank you, Ali. Mike?
Yeah, I think like from the government perspective and connecting to what Ali said and industry, Obviously, there's been some massive breaches, not just industry-wise, but DoD-wise as well. We've looked at some studies that suggest as many as 20% of all of our physical devices, and that includes many DoD platforms, have malicious, corrupt, or counterfeit chips in them. So the cybersecurity around our Department of Defense platforms, our nation's security is obviously critical to national security and our own defense. The kind of the follow-on to that is as we move into what's called the CMMC, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It's required, if you're going to do any business with the federal government, that you meet some of these standards. So not just recognizing cybersecurity holistically for what it is, but recognizing if you're going to do any business with the U.S. government. So that's DoD, that's all agencies, VA, et cetera. You've got to meet some of these compliance standards in order to do that. Some of that sounds really daunting to some entities. It certainly can be, but there are certainly pathways to kind of tiered certification, things like that. So absolutely critical from the government's perspective that entities know what it is and how to get engaged and be compliant.
I can follow on the experts, so I'm glad they got to go first. I'll just make 3 quick points. One, local governments are terrified of cybersecurity challenges. We've seen it's like waiting for lightning to strike or a shark to hit or something. I don't know what the right metaphor is. Seeing how many communities get hit with ransomware that can just take over and really damage a community's ability to provide the basic government services. And we feel pretty, I think most of us feel pretty unarmed in that kind of global marketplace, like you're swimming out in the ocean just waiting for a shark to come up and get you. You just don't know what it'll be. You hope the numbers work in your favor because there's so many of us. But that's terrifying because it really can hurt the ability to provide basic services. A second point I'd make is just, kind of following on Ali and consumers. I just think about the health field, for example, and how the idea that we think about our health information and how personal so much of that is, and how as that becomes more automated and shared and such, how scary it is for people to think about. Yes, we worry about social media, to be sure, and emails, but if it starts thinking about somebody's going to find out about my health and share that information with other people or use it for untoward activities, that's scary. And then the last point is just the basic issue of trust. If people don't trust in the protection, in the security of digital information, it really hurts our ability to do a lot of things we want to do. I think about one example, just transportation and automating and improving the intelligence of our transportation networks. A lot of people are worried, well, I don't know if I want somebody to drive my car because I don't trust them to drive my computer. And if somebody can hack in, what can happen? And the old story that says it doesn't take that much to take over America. All you'll have to do is take over the navigation systems and make us all drive off a road somewhere, But that trust really can impact the ability to do things that can be really helpful and important. And if we don't build the trust, we can't do a lot of other important things.
Thank you for those perspectives. That was really good to hear from kind of the local government perspective, the federal government perspective, and then the private perspective. Let me talk a little bit about cybersecurity from an economic development perspective. So I just sent a link in the chat to an article I wrote about cybersecurity and how it can become Bloomington's focus for the future. So 100 years ago, we used to make furniture right here in this building. 50 years ago, we used to make refrigerators and televisions, and we don't make those things anymore in Bloomington. Those companies don't exist here. And those two industries, or those 3 industries really, were ones that really drove a lot of growth in Bloomington. And so I think Bloomington is really well poised for growth in cybersecurity for a bunch of reasons. One, we have a lot of cybersecurity companies here. We're quite literally in the middle of what I'm calling the innovation corridor from Crane to Bloomington to Muscatatuck So separating those three areas is only about 90 minutes worth of driving. IU has a world-class cybersecurity curriculum. Ivy Tech has an 11-month certificate where from beginning to end, literally takes less than a year, and you can get a job worth $50,000 to $75,000 afterwards. So there's a lot of unique resources that Bloomington has here. So I guess I want to dive into that a little bit more, and maybe I'll start with Ali because they chose Bloomington to open up a satellite office here. So what about Bloomington is or was attractive to you? Why do you want to still continue to be here and continue to grow here? And how did you choose Bloomington for for your company versus all of the other cities that obviously exist in the world?
Yeah. There's a lot of great cities across America, and we kind of looked at it, from a 10,000 feet view, where we started studying Indiana, the different universities the great state of Indiana has and has had for a long time. And, the city of Bloomington kind of popped up on our maps in terms of just the balance between the city and the university. And, something that's very unique with Bloomington is business still continues when the students go back home, right? And that was really important to us. And then just meeting with the mayor, and the mayor, I think it was before the 200-year anniversary. He goes, Ali, what a great city looks like. You start a school, you wait 200 years, and everything kind of comes together. And I was like, Mayor, where are we at with that 200 years? He goes, next year is our 200th year. So I was like, okay. That got us all really excited, but it didn't take long when you went to go meet the different deans of the school, the different leaders of the city, like the mayor, and the vision that they have of how they want to drive innovation. Innovation is easy to just say, but then you got to look at the actions of what is really happening within the city, what's happening within the schools, assessing the curriculum path. Meeting with the deans and the vision that they have, what they're driving, the balance between the different schools and the curriculums that converge together. Because those skill sets are very unique, right? We're building a skill set for the future that has to be very dynamic. And so when we looked at the balance between what the great school has to offer from IU to Ivy Tech, as you just mentioned, and what the city provides in terms of this balance within the city, that gives everyone the ability to kind of thrive, but also be able to be part of a community. It was hard to just say satellite office for us. It was like, this is going to be our second headquarters for us. So we have big goals of what we're trying to achieve in the next 2 years, and Bloomington is a strategic partner for us for that.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I love to hear that second headquarters. The other things I heard in there were leaders and deans and curriculum, and obviously the professors create the curriculum. And so kind of the theme I'm hearing is people. And so maybe as a follow-up question, this one is for John or Mike. Can you maybe talk about the people in Bloomington and the skill sets that folks here have, either at Crane or Bloomington or Muscatatuck, that help create a kind of an incubator, so to speak, for cybersecurity companies, and why we're well poised for growth there?
I can go, I guess. Thanks, and then Mike, clean it up. Well, Ali, it's really good to hear that, and I do. It is true. Daniel Patrick Moynihan said that if you want a great city, found a university and wait 200 years, and that's I love that quote. Of course, IU turned 200 years old in 2020. But there's the reason it is really important and true to think what is that about, and what that's about. Pat, you mentioned we don't make furniture, we don't make elevators, we don't make refrigerators or color TVs anymore. We still quarry limestone But you know what we really do still is we really pursue knowledge, and we really continue to create people who ask questions and pursue new knowledge and identify new things that can be done. And that a university, a great university, a research university, is a place that is just filled with people who are trying to solve problems, create new knowledge, understand how to do things differently. And that ethos, that's innovation, right? It's knowledge innovation. That culture has been so important for Bloomington for 200 years. Maybe, I guess it takes a long time to really steep and brew. But the focus on the people and who is around and what kind of people are they? And yes, we've had furniture makers and TV makers and others. We still have a very robust life sciences sector that began primarily because of an innovator and an inventor who has now with help build some momentum around that. But the finding the places where you naturally evolve toward, and Ali, you talked about the schools, who's training in this stuff. I think city has a role, government has a role in this. We can talk about that another, maybe later, about kind of how do we try to do the infrastructure and create the field in which this stuff can happen. But it really is the reason the university is so important is it builds people who pursue knowledge, and particularly that kind of research ethos of how do we find new ways to think about things, new ways to do things is fundamental, I think.
No, thanks, John. And I think from the federal government perspective, as we look at kind of the ecosystem, you got to have the crockpot, which is Bloomington. You've got to have that city that's business friendly, that's academic friendly, that's not traditional contractor friendly. So a lot of great things can kind of happen. We're very fortunate that IU is also the manager of this iLight network, and for everyone's kind of visibility, the iLight network connects all of our state universities on a dedicated high-speed fiber line. So you've got IU as the manager of that. You have their high-performance computing. You have access to all of our universities in a high-speed dedicated fiber network and a secure FedRAMP High cloud that's available for all of our collaboration. So you've got a couple of very key ingredients for all of this to kind of come together. You've got the human capital pipeline also has to be there. So as the National Security Innovation Network looked at where to put program directors, we've got to have kind of all these prerequisites for us to kind of station a guy like me at a university like IU, and then work kind of in state with all of our state activities. So we have to have a strong academic and certificate pipeline to fill that demand signal, a human capital need. So do we have them here in the ecosystem out of the gate? Yes. Do we have a pipeline that can continue to feed that and support a lot of these large program activities? You have some programs coming online that will add as many as 300 people in the next 12 or so months. So you have a very strong demand signal. You have an ecosystem that supports it and a human capital pipeline that can meet the requirements. So that's, again, in my opinion, why you're going to see tremendous growth in the topic area, because we have all the key ingredients that exist here. We don't have a big gap in any of them. We don't have to create anything. We don't have to reach out across state lines to fulfill the requirement needs.
That's great. And so I heard a handful of things in there about in terms of kind of infrastructure and resources for the area. So high-speed, dedicated, secure fiber line, and I think I heard that's between universities. There's a lot of demand, obviously. There's some human capital here. There's certificates, and so maybe kind of an offshoot of this question. What are some of the areas that we either need to double down on, like those that we just mentioned, or what are some of the areas that we need to focus on because we're not as good or not as far in those areas? And Mike, maybe you can start that off, and then we'll follow up with Ali from kind of the private perspective in terms of what he may need to see for his company.
Sure. And one other additive to that mention of iLight, this dedicated high-speed fiber line, is if you haven't seen, you can certainly share it or throw it up in the chat. You go back a couple of months, and we did a press release where Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane is now connected to that. As far as we know, that's the first warfare center in the country, in the Department of Defense, that is now connected to its state universities on this collaborative dedicated network. So we have some very forward-leaning just collaboration tools that are set up, right? And this goes, certainly the iLight network goes back several years at least, but it exists. We created it. We connected Crane to it. So you've got this dedicated network for driving innovation and collaboration. As far as additional kind of topic areas, I'll try and do this briefly, but that's one of the reasons that I'm here from the National Security Innovation Network, right, Pat, is identifying the capabilities that exist in the ecosystem. And how do I then take academics and non-traditional defense contractors and map them to requirements? So, org chart wise, Ensign direct reports up to the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. So we're positioned really, really well. So you're talking about problem areas and program areas and programs that are huge in the 8, 9, and 10 figure range. So when you start to deal with cybersecurity and AI and machine learning and quantum computing and high performance computing and hypersonics and material science, those are all top 10 DoD kind of program activities. So, the collisions that we're trying to make aren't necessarily overly complex, right? At least in the DoD space. It's recognizing the large programs and topic areas of interest and trying to map those. And I do this kind of at a push-pull where, again, Pat, you and I kind of laugh at this. I'm always rooting around inside the mill trying to find companies that do certain things. And I try and point them to problem statements that I know exist in the department or with, my 30 plus DoD customers. And then reverse, I get DoD customers who get in touch with me and my colleagues around the country and say, here's our topic areas, here's our programs. We're trying to find academics and non-traditionals who are in this space. And I'll use a really, really great example, use case from this past summer, where Ensign had our X-Force fellows work on a problem statement for NSWC Crane, and they were trying to map all the academics and papers and companies who exist in the country in the topic area of hypersonics. So over the course of a 10-week fellowship, our interdisciplinary team, 3 IU students, 1 Purdue, 1 Notre Dame, created this platform for the data visualization for then Crane to use, and made a follow-on award to IU to kind of take that work, continue to pull it forward, and map that ecosystem who can support that program. So again, those are my broad brush, but it's not overly complex. Pay attention to the programs and the problem statements and just map them to our capabilities.
I love all that innovation and collaboration, especially among different entities, especially 2 big entities in the area. Ali, tell me a little bit about maybe what are the resources that MetroStar may need to see in this region that it needs to be able to grow.
Yeah, and I think Mike really summarized it well. And from just where we are, I think when Mike talks about look at the capabilities of the programs and then map them to what you as an organization has to offer. You again linking it back to IU, right, is really about the development of the talent. So for us to be in the presence and within the market in Bloomington and Crane, we're getting a really great understanding of, okay, when we're doubling down on various data science capabilities or machine learning capabilities, we have students that are graduating that are being trained very well from an academia standpoint. How could we bring them through a internship program or through our upskilling program to now really align those skill sets that they've developed and the knowledge that they've gained at the university and now be able to map it back to a program of, okay, how does our capabilities in predictive analytics that we're building can really support hypersonic capabilities? How could it help collect better sensory data that we could now make various types of better automation, that we could have now more prescriptive ways of being able to repeat that human cycle in terms of quality data being outputted. So for us, those are areas that we're continuously doubling down on, to really, from the presence of the market, to really understand and what type of human capital strategy we have and what type of skill sets we're building for the future, making sure our timing is correct, right? You don't want to build too much into the future. Your timing just has to be right, that the programs are in demand and need of it. And then for us, ultimately is, keeping those jobs there in Bloomington, right? Keeping the jobs in Indiana and not letting them go to other states that are maybe better aligned. So hopefully Mike goes and does some good hunting and brings those programs back into our community for us to continue expanding.
Thank you very much. And so we've, go
Can
ahead,
I
John,
just-
please.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in to talking about challenges, and listening to Mike and Ali. I think from the city's perspective, and I love the crock pot image, by the way, Mike. That's great. A slow cooker that lets juices go back and forth, and things evolve over time that might not so quickly. But from our perspective, in a lot of ways, what it seems what we want to do is, I heard somebody describe the marketplace as, to be successful, you want to delight your customers so they come back for more. You want to delight people so they come back for more. From a city perspective, we all this stuff happens, of course. The city, we try to create the infrastructure in the crock pot in which it can happen. But how do we help people be delighted in the experience of this happening? And that means things like the basic quality of life and housing, and what's it like to be in Bloomington. It has to be, you want to make it delightful so people actually say, wow, this is, not only professionally, but in life, as people, it's a delightful place to be. And that means parks, it means culture, all those things. It means being inclusive. It means being welcoming, a place where everyone can feel welcome. It means digital infrastructure besides the high level iLight dedicated network, something we've been trying to work on. It's hard in America to keep building a better digital infrastructure for everybody else. But that's, from my perspective, that's kind of the city's job, is to try to make all this stuff produce a delightful experience, that you can be professionally successful, but also that when your people come here and tell their story to others, they're like, wow, this is a great place to be. Whether it's in the mill, and when Ali, you came there and said, wow, this is a really easy place to open a new place. That process and that experience is a good one, is really our job.
Thank you, John. And let me just dive in a few details in terms of how we make it easy for companies to start here at the mill, like MetroStar. So all of our private offices are on a month-to-month basis with a 2-year maximum. So really easy to get in and get out. Very low risk. You don't have to sign a 5-year lease like you might in a traditional real estate environment. And all of our offices are fully furnished, and so it comes with a desk and a chair for each employee. So quite literally, all you have to have is your laptop and your person, and you're ready to go. And so I don't know for sure, but I think that's maybe one of the reasons why MetroStar chose us, is because it's just easy to get started here. Is that close, Ali, or did I completely make that up?
No. I mean, absolutely. There's, I think the mayor said delightful experience, and the first impression is where you have that opportunity to really create that delightful experience. So I think, Pat, the mill, just spending time with you over 2 years ago, of understanding, first time I came there, the mill was still under construction, right? But hey, here's the vision of what the mill is going to be. And the reality was still aligned to the vision, which kind of gives you and increases your trust of what you can do. But I think there's additional parts of the resources that the mill deploys because of being connected with the economic development team that really helps you open up the door, so you didn't have to wait 3 months to figure out how to get into the Luddy Hall, right? The Kelly School, even the Jacob School. I think we could probably find some software engineers out of the Jacob School too. So it just made it so efficient to be able to make sure that this decision you want to make it carefully, but then you still have to have a sense of urgency to make it. You guys made it really, really easy for us to go through that process and make it as less painful than other experiences that we've had in our own national capital region where we live, right? So kudos to you all.
Awesome. Thank you for that perspective in terms of how Bloomington might compare to the DC region. So this is a follow-up question for everybody, but really kind of let's start with Ali. So so this is a jobs question. Who can work in cybersecurity and AI? Is this really for only people that are trained in those specific areas, or are there are there other opportunities for non-cybersecurity, non-AI folks to be able to work in this industry in these companies?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm a philosophy major, right? That's been 22 years in the information technology realm. And, I think there's a lot of great skill sets that you could bring, that you don't have to be a pure coder. I think you have to know how to speak to an engineer, to a data scientist. But I mean, you think about AI, Pat, before you make AI something that's trusted by the individuals that are going to trust a machine, an algorithm to make certain decisions, there's ethical aspects to AI. And you could imagine you don't need to be a data engineer to really understand that, but you need to understand the theory. You need to really understand the mechanics of the decision points of how that decision, logic is going to be made. So you could be great at logic, you could be great in ethics, you could be great in philosophy. So I think some of these fields, people tend to be guards up. I'm fearful. I don't know how to write an algorithm. So I think some of these fields, certainly with cybersecurity and AI, are very diverse. There's a lot of great openings to it. Think about even cybersecurity and design, right? I always would say that missile alert we had in Hawaii was a bad user experience of how they designed a system for someone to hit the wrong button. That's more about design. So imagine if, you could prevent something that happens where other people can make bad decisions from it from a design perspective. So I think when people are looking at these two emerging fields, take a step back, get yourself out of that environment and start thinking about what your skill sets are, what you can kind of bring into that environment of whether it's cybersecurity and AI. And think about it that AI is going to have a knowledge aspect to it. It's going to have a cognitive piece to it. It's going to have a neural network piece to it. There's planning involved in it. So there's perception involved in it. So when you think about that, none of those that I said, you have to be a mathematician or a computer science engineer to kind of get into that. So I think those are really exciting fields that people that are non-technical should absolutely look at them, because that's where great innovation comes from, is from the outside.
Excellent. Mike, do you have any specific thoughts in terms of, what kind of jobs, who can work in this space, particularly kind of from the government perspective? Is it just folks who have AI and cybersecurity skills, or from the government perspective, particularly at Crane, who can work in this space?
Anyone with the asterisk, right? You've got to have some of the internal tools and desires to want to be successful in the space. But what we've seen, Pat, on the human capital side, you've got a couple of different things. So I work closely with, Scott Shackelford and the cybersecurity program there at IU. And they have, obviously, their degree programs. They have executive education certificate programs. You work with a former IU alum, Scott Jones, who runs the 1150 Academy, the Coding Academy, downtown Indianapolis. You work inside of the VA, and they've got their veteran technology education courses that allow veterans to use their GI Bill money to get certificates in the space. So you're going to see a lot of, I used to say, kind of in the Marine Corps to transitioning veterans, they really are these great pieces of moldable clay. So anybody can work in the cybersecurity and AI space. You've got to have some certainly internal tools and desire to kind of want to be there, but there's a number of interdisciplinary kind of approaches to bring a lot more folks into the space than from a straight a BA or BS program that you might see. And we're seeing a lot of that. The demand signal is huge. The success rate out of some of the coding and certificate programs is tremendous. When we work with Scott Shackelford and the certificate graduates from their Kelly School executive program, the demand signal for the graduates of that is tremendous. And you're seeing a lot of industry and even large prime contractors really adjust some of the prerequisites for folks getting into certain positions. And that's been huge too. And Ali should probably mention this, because once you get that great moldable piece of clay, they come into a certificate program and they do well and have some of those key skills at the other end of the program, degree or certificate, and you can get them on the job and working with in the company and then working with their government customer and then training them up to kind of the activity. Absolutely doable. So you've got multiple streams kind of feeding this. The demand signal is huge. So industry-wise and government-wise.
It's a really good perspective, Mike. And I'll note that, just like really any industry that specializes in one thing, I came from the digital advertising industry. Not everybody that works in your company is focused on that one particular skill, right? You have sales reps, you have marketers, you have HR folks, you have accounting folks. And so even if you don't have any necessarily passion for working in a particular industry, you still have a passion for sales, passion for accounting. You probably want to work in that new industry, right? But there's going to be a lot of different folks that can work in cybersecurity and AI that don't necessarily or haven't necessarily been trained in those areas. John, this next one is for you. How do these technology companies, specifically cybersecurity and AI companies, benefit other business sectors in the community?
Yeah, and let me just say, it popped in my head too. If AI and cybersecurity either already or will soon be penetrating every part of our lives, which in many ways they do and they will, it reminds me, even our cybersecurity training that we're doing in the city about phishing and such things, that's like communications, and they're developing, entertaining ways to train people on things. That's a whole other realm. But look, so one of the big challenges, you asked about challenges, one of the big challenges in Indiana, and we're part of that, has been a multi-decade decrease in the share of national income. Indiana has seen a 50-year decline in the share of national income that is earned in Indiana. That reflects a lot of things, and every governor who I've talked to has said, we're going to stop it and we're going to fight it, and they all do. But it's difficult, and one of the most important ways to turn that curve is to invest and support the high value jobs that mean you are creating tradable sectors, you're creating high value jobs that have major multiplier effects. And Pat, I know you mentioned that in the piece that you shared. These kinds of jobs, these traded sector, high value jobs like in AI, like in cybersecurity, pick your multiple. One you've shared as a 5 times multiple for jobs. Every job like that creates 2 professional jobs and 3 service jobs. The momentum that can come from a sector whether it's like life sciences that we've seen, or of course there's examples all around the country, you all know that. But if a sector that starts to build momentum where a company and an employee each feel like, hey, this is a better than average place, because if it doesn't work out for me exactly this way, there's other options for me here. It doesn't mean I have to relocate and my life is blown up if it doesn't work out with this company or with this employer or this supplier or whatever. So I think from a city perspective, seeing the momentum build around these high value traded sectors is incredibly important. That's what color televisions were, and it's what elevators were, and it's what refrigerators were back in those heavy manufacturing days. And it's the future for us. And Bloomington, it's how people will come to Bloomington to grow. It's how Bloomington will remain and grow in diversity and innovation. And without it, as some people have said, Bloomington could have drifted into a great place to be a student or a retiree. Wonderful. That's not what the future of our city needs to be. We have retirees and we have students, but we need the dynamic job marketplace that grows and creates the spin-off jobs and professionals and service industry that's so important.
Thank you, John. So to kind of summarize in my own words, these cybersecurity companies, these technology companies, AI companies, they bring in capital from outside of the community. I think that's the really great thing that makes them such a driver of growth. So we quite literally import capital from other cities and then use that to circulate money within our community. So all of that money from the coast and other areas, from investors or from customers, then gets spent at restaurants, at barbershops, at places that every community needs to be able to have a good quality of life. I'm gonna add or I just added it to the chat. There's a really good white paper from the Kauffman Foundation, or actually it's on the Kauffman Foundation site, but it's written by a couple of MIT professors. And it's about the two different types of entrepreneurship. And one is small businesses and one is innovation driven businesses. And one isn't better than the other. They're just different. But I put that in the chat to really highlight that you need to treat those two things differently because they have two different functions within the community. They help communities, both of them together, kind of working together, help communities become healthy. We are starting to get some questions from our attendees. And so I want to tackle some of these. We have about 20 minutes left. If anybody has any other questions, I still have questions of my own to ask the panelists, but please feel free to start pinging me with questions and I'll add them to the list. So I'll kick this one off myself. So this one is from Jenny Munoz. What efforts are being made from each of your organizations to increase the number of women as well as Black and Latinx folks in these discussions and to foster a culture that actively supports them? So specifically at the Mill, there's a couple things that we're doing. One is we have a scholarship program for women and underrepresented minorities. So we started this in February this year with our first round of member scholarships. And then we did another round in July. And so between the two, we have about, I think it's $24,000 around there of annual scholarships that we give to folks to be able to have desks and membership and access to all the amenities here at the Mill. So it's a 19,000 square feet of co-working and incubator space. Our customers rent desks from us on a month-to-month basis, and they get access to our kitchenette, our call rooms, our conference rooms, the high-speed internet. It's a gig up, gig down, and so that's one thing we're doing. The other thing that we're getting ready to do, we've announced this publicly, is that we have a fund here at the Mill called Flywheel Fund, and so we're dedicating a certain percentage of that to specifically Black founders, and so that was part of our Black Lives Matter statement that we issued earlier this summer. So those are two things that we're doing to create a more inclusive community. And I'll open it up for anybody else who wants to follow on.
Yeah, Pat, I'll jump in if that's okay. No, it's I think it's top of mind for us. You know, MetroStar 22 years ago was founded as a minority business. And so for us, it's always diversity and inclusion has always been kind of part of our DNA for the past 2 decades. You know, we're really proud, but we also say it's not good enough, where 32% of our leadership in our organization are female, and very diverse in terms of mindset, in terms of backgrounds and what they bring to the table. But it's something that I think for executives, it's top of mind, certainly has been for me for many, many years, for us to continue diversifying. I feel that there's, you know, from a diversity in terms of how we recruit from what universities, what opportunities do we give to recent college students that have the passion and energy from various, you know, economic disadvantages and communities that we could recruit from. So for us, these are constant discussion points and constant planning for us to make sure that as we grow, we kind of grow and keep that culture and that DNA that we had of, you know, saying we're a mini United Nations within MetroStar systems. And how do we keep that culture intact as we're growing to continue being diverse, continue to be open, continue to discuss things that people get comfortable, but we want them to get uncomfortable to kind of discuss. So get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable about these discussion points and what we have to do to make sure that we are aligned within the communities that people come to MetroStar from Bloomington to Reston, Virginia. So we're really proud of that, and certainly it's something that we as executives across the team continuously look to, of creating programs for women in IT is a big one for us to say across every single program, how do we diversify and bring women into the IT field more and more? So those are some of the initiatives and ways that we kind of handle the diversity and inclusion today.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else want to tackle this
I'd
one?
just say, and from a city government to a firm, I think we will be successful in direct proportion to how well we are open to and include all members of the human family. We learned that lesson the hard way through history, and we are not nearly where we need to be, but we will not be as successful as we should be until we are open to the full range of the human family, from gender to race to background to, some call it neural diversity, personalities. We just have to learn to recognize that that inclusiveness is so important. You know, the city, there's 100 examples, but you know, we've instituted a Blackie Brown Arts Festival that focuses on arts, people of color. I know the Mill, we have the Ida Lovelace. Let's be intentional about the importance of women in this space that has not been good right through history. So it's just a fundamentally important question, and the right question to always keep asking.
Thank you.
And from the federal government's perspective, Pat, I mean, we're very focused on helping our different program offices achieve what are called their set aside goals and or requirements. So you're going to see large subcontract requirements when a large prime, say, wins a large task order award, say, you know, $100 million, depending on where their program office is on their supplier diversity and their performance on contract awards to set aside companies, that threshold can often be as much as 30 or 40%. And so you've got, again, that great kind of crockpot scenario where you've got a large prime who's going to be needing the diversity that exists in the ecosystem for them to ultimately perform on their large contract. So all these, you know, guidelines are you know, on the SBA, but so your minority owned, your woman owned, your small disadvantaged, your hub zones, your veteran owned, service disabled veteran owned, and minority and women owned businesses are are very actively sought after for performing on federal contracts. And a lot of program offices, quite candidly, oftentimes fall short of their performance to goal. So there's a lot of upstream opportunity for your set-aside companies to access market share, very, very quickly.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. So we've got about 10 minutes left. We still have a bunch of questions in chat and Q&A and to me privately. So maybe for the next handful, we'll just do kind of one or two answers rather than from all the panelists. That way we can get through all the questions. So one is from Jay Steele. So he asks, for someone that does not have a cybersecurity background, what are some of the hard skills and soft skills that you think are most important to be successful in this field? So Mike or Ali, this is probably a good one for either of you.
Yeah, from a skills perspective, and personally, I've got a 17-year-old high school senior son who's interested kind of in the space, so I get to see kind of firsthand and be an enabler for him. But kind of some of the soft skills are, he's big into gaming. And he's just now started to learn coding. So he's got interest and aptitude and desire to kind of get in that space. And I think that's, most importantly is your interest and desire to get into an industry and sure you can learn and increase your skill sets. And then, again, I just will very quickly reflect back to what I mentioned on a lot of those different kind of certificate and degree programs that are out there. Where if you're a really good moldable piece of clay and can go through some of those programs and come out the other end with the skills that you need to get into the space and start to learn and be successful.
Ali, what do you think are the hard skills and maybe more on the soft skill side that folks might need to get into this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike brought up some great ones there. From just a level of, I always go back to from a creativity standpoint, but also the ability of how well you could analyze your communication skills, how well of a communicator are you, really decision-making skills as well, organizational skills are very important. I think the mayor kind of alluded to this, where how creative can you get to conduct social engineering on someone via just an email, right? I think you don't have to be a coder, right? You almost have to be a great storyteller in terms of really resonating with someone to believe that this is Mike, right? This is Pat, this is the mayor sending me an email about, Ali, what do you think about this program? Click this link. So how creative can you get from that? So I think those are some of the soft skills. I think on the hard skills, I will go back to what Mike said. There's some great certification programs that will take those soft skills and help you unlock them with some of the harder skills for you to get behind to support the mission programs that the opportunities are out there.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Here's one for John. What's the one thing Bloomington should focus on to make it easier for tech companies to grow and stay here?
Well, the short answer is there is no one thing. I mean, I wish there were one thing you could do, but there isn't. But I guess I'd kind of go back to, you got to make it a delightful experience, which means people, it means infrastructure, quality of life. And that's what we'll keep focusing on, is just trying to make it, and telling the story, perhaps also, making sure people know about what's going on. But there isn't one thing, but, success builds on success, trying to create a virtuous cycle, I guess, right? To make it a delightful place for people to experience that, and that will build on its own. If there were one thing, we'd all be doing it. So,
I'll echo John's comment about making sure folks know about all the good things that are here. Bloomington has a lot of resources that would make other cities of our size really envious. We have $1 billion medical device company here. We have a world-class research institution. We have the world's third largest naval warfare base. We have a campus of the nation's largest community college. The city, right when COVID happened, put in $2.5 million for our small business fund. That was 2 times the amount of any other city that we could find per capita in the United States. there's a lot of support here, and you see that happening. You see that start to actually have good outcomes with our companies here. We had a company raise $10 million in a Series A fund, a fundraising round last year. We had another company get sold to Facebook. We had just a month ago, I was looking to see when we announced it, one of our companies they announced that they got into Techstars, which is one of the world's 2 best accelerators. So there's lots and lots of stuff happening here, lots of resources, and I think we need to make sure that we let folks know about them. And so, all right, so enough of that commercial. So one from earlier. What are some problems that new cybersecurity companies can get into to be able to look? What are some problems that new cybersecurity companies can get into to solve? This one's for anybody.
I mean, so some of the program areas that's certainly that I'm working in and MetroStars is a big player in and growing in Bloomington and working with Crane. You know, you've got agile software development, healthcare privacy, genomic privacy, trusted supply chain, trusted microelectronics, trusted model-based systems engineering, and the protection of all of those networks and platforms. So again, from the DoD side, those are some of the topic areas that you're going to see really prevalent kind of in the ecosystem and DoD wide. So as you're looking to kind of get into the space, I would say if you touch on one or even part of one of those, there's plenty of work share opportunities inside there.
And then I'll just add to that too, Pat. I think as Mike kind of mentioned here, for us, we look at cybersecurity across everything we do. So from our civilian to our defense to our healthcare capabilities. So I think cybersecurity is something that can be really a horizontal into various verticals of industry that you're trying to go into. So if you're trying to go into healthcare, there's so many different layers of cybersecurity that you could really look to maximize your efforts into.
I'll just selfishly say local and state governments are a big part of our economy. They're often overlooked and they are often way behind. We are often way behind in technology. So looking for ways AI and cybersecurity can change the way government does its work and protect what government does is a really big area too.
And Mike rattled off a long list of, candidly, a bunch of terms that they were the first time I've ever heard them. And I think that really speaks to either my ignorance of this sector that I'm planning to flag in that Bloomington could go around, or B, that it's growing so fast. I hope it's more the latter than it is the former. I mean, this industry is growing by literally billions of dollars every year. And those are just the statistics from the federal government. Those aren't private statistics. And so any
so
industry
Pat, I could say if those topic areas didn't exist in Bloomington and IU and Crane, I wouldn't be there. So
awesome.
They're all there. They're all there in spades, and they're working with great partners like MetroStars and trying to bring them into the activity as well, where they can have big impacts.
Gotcha. We have about 3 minutes left. And so we still have a bunch of questions, so I'm trying to cherry pick the one I want personally answered. So how does cybersecurity and AI work hand in hand, or are they very different, or are they very separate parts of tech? We've talked about them kind of as two sides of the same coin, but maybe for the audience, maybe, talk about them. Are they very different, or are they really two sides of the same coin?
Yeah, I'll go first, Pat. I'll just use two examples, logistics and distribution. So imagine the automation that we've seen into logistics and distribution. Just experience your Amazon Prime, and then now they're getting their drones approved to actually even speed up the process even more within the logistics and distribution models that they have. Now imagine the automation that goes into that from a artificial intelligence capability without cybersecurity. So they absolutely have to coexist together. Think about it from a healthcare perspective, and the mayor mentioned this as well in terms of the consumer trust. So when you think about the automation that you could bring to help increase patient experience and the things that happen in the background, can you actually do that with machines to have output at a human level quality that you can call artificial intelligence without cybersecurity? So there may be two different domains, but this is a really ugly Venn diagram. But you know, they definitely converge, and they have to coexist together.
Of course, 1 minute left, and I start talking when I'm muted. Anybody want to follow up Ollie's answer? All right, let me make one more pitch for Mill Week since we're at the very end of our panel. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to all of our attendees for staying throughout. We pretty much had the same number of attendees from start to finish, so that's great that we retained everybody. Mill Week continues on today and tomorrow with AI cybersecurity, Crossroads on Wednesday, in our podcast conference on Thursday and Friday. I just dropped a link in the chat, so you can sign up for any or all of those. There's various panels happening, and then the finals of Crossroads are on Wednesday. That should be really good. And then, of course, a full 2-day conference for the podcast festival. So we would love to have everybody there. And one person is asking, will we replay recordings be available for Mill Week events? Yes. So we are going to make those all available for folks afterwards. But of course, we'd love to have you in person. That way you can join in the real-time live conversation. All right. I think that's it, gentlemen. Thank you. And we hope to see all the other attendees later today.
Thanks
so
everybody.
much, Ali,
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you,
Great
Pat.
to see you. Thank you,
Good seeing
Pat.
you, Mary.
Good to see you. Take
Thanks,
care.
Ali.
Yeah.
Take care, Mike. Thank you. Bye.